Hey everyone, welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I'm so grateful, truly, that you are here. Welcome to this new moon forecast. We have an upcoming new moon in Sagittarius conjunct the fixed star Antares. That's coming up just within hours of this recording, actually. So, very early in the morning, Eastern Standard Time in the US on December 1st, we have a new moon conjunct Antares, and we're going to look at the main astrological themes for the next 2 weeks, the first half of the lunar cycle, so new moon to full moon. So welcome back, everyone. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate you. Here are my actual eyeballs for just a moment that you can see that I'm a human being before I put the PPE back on. So I hope everyone's doing well. Happy Thanksgiving to those of us in the US, but ultimately Sagittarius time, as we're going to talk about, is a really good time for everyone to really get into the gratitude space, the attitude of gratitude, as it were. So, no major announcements right now. We're just going to get right into the astrology. We have some starseed, galactic astrology that's really strong throughout this next 2 weeks, not the least of which is the fact that the new moon is pretty much sandwiching the fixed star Antares, and the sun is really at the foot of Ophiuchus, the foot that is subduing the scorpion in the Scorpio constellation, because that's where Antares is, the heart of the scorpion. So boy, there's so much to talk about with this. I tried to do this yesterday, and it was just a jumbled mess, and today was a very personally difficult day in my personal life. And so I do feel actually a lot more calm and articulate now that this particular event has come and we've participated in it. So a lot more difficult than I wanted it to be. And sometimes being human is just just something that you wish you could just not necessarily trade in, but just like, oh my God, can I just dial back the feels of everything? Geez. So, but now that that event has come and gone, and it was very pleasant, there was a bit of closure involved with it. Now I feel like I can more calmly and in a more organized fashion, hopefully, deliver this new moon forecast. So where the sun is in Sagittarius, the moon will be in Sagittarius, and at the point of this recording, we are actually at the very back end of the balsamic moon phase. So the lunar cycle comes in 8 phases, as it is in its journey around our planet and in relationship to the sun. And so the balsamic moon phase is where everything is reduced down, and you have the moon is at its darkest, preparing for the next new moon, which is when the sun and the moon are in this conjunction, as you can see on the screen here. They come into conjunction and line up, and then we start the new cycle. So the balsamic moon is a dark moon, but it's finishing the previous cycle. Everything is stripped down back to the next seed point. And so it's a time of reflection often. It's not a great time to make decisions. And the feels are just as, because the moon rules our feels, the feels are just as intense, especially because we're revisiting the beginning of the lunar cycle when the balsamic moon is happening, right? You are returning back to where you started, but with all the experience of that whole lunar cycle now being applied to that. And so, and especially a Scorpio moon, I feel like the feels have been really strong, and the subconscious connection to Scorpio themes has been very strong in the last couple days. Of course, over Thanksgiving as well, the moon was pretty much reaching the point of degree of its new moon phase last month. So that was at 9 to 10 degrees of Scorpio, which, strangely enough, has to do with a fellowship supper where people with common experience come together and they strengthen or form new bonds with each other it's camaraderie and comradeship, that particular degree. And the moon was truly passing over this degree at Thanksgiving. And I feel like the nature of that event, especially in the US, but probably everywhere, but especially in the US, I do feel like that there is certainly a strengthening of common shared experiences that is generating an energy, because that's what Scorpio is really about, the raw energy that's generated from relationship, whether it's a business relationship, personal relationship, sexual relationship, spiritual relationship, any type of relationship that's contractual and committed, which is the seventh house. The eighth house is about the raw energy that is generated when you bring when you bring all of these elements together. So the intensity is that it generates more than you came in with, right? That's the magic of the eighth house in Scorpio. And so it's a incredible power that we all hold within ourselves just naturally, and then is applied to other areas of our creative life or work life, to put, generate more than what we each bring to the table. And in a way, hopefully, that's not exploiting, but that absolutely is part of the eighth house as well. That's the darkness and the shadow of all of these the potential that can come out of it. It's all about, the intention that you're putting into these relationships, and whatever you're committed to, it will generate a raw power that is mysterious and leads to wisdom, but is in itself the raw power. So we're going to get into this as we go through the imagery and symbolism of the astrology of the next 2 weeks. But I wanted to just do the retrospective. It's important as we're about to start a new phase, which is this new moon, and having this energy of Antares and what that represents being in tow around this time. That's already very, very activated and very people are just very engaged in terms of family and what that means to them, and being grateful for certain things or being not so grateful about certain things. There's just a lot of this going on. And so the comradeship or the fellowship that each person is participating in and committing to is generating an energy. And there is a lot of language with these particular degrees and the stars they're connected to and what they have represented astrologically. There's a lot of language about a reward or a successful project, something successful, going into battle, taking a risk, doing something actively in order to accomplish something. There's a lot of, and really putting ourselves into, self-expenditure into something that is meaningful to us. I mean, that's the thing about the zodiac sign of Sagittarius, is that there's wisdom and purpose and meaning to the social life. And that's where you really discover that. And that comes through like all those ninth house things, right? So like travel and stuff. Foreign travel, broadening horizons culturally, that draws out understanding as well. And so whatever it is for each of us, though, there's a lot of potential there's a lot of opportunity. But the thing about Antares, or the rival of Mars, is that it's the female side of what Mars rules, which is Scorpio. It's the heart of the Scorpion. So the sting is powerful and is almost instinctual to protect itself. But I really want to draw your attention to Ophiuchus and where all of this is happening in terms of these constellations, because I'm seeing some ripple, especially from right now into like February and March, and for whatever reason, there's just a lot of what's happening right now seems to be connected to what's going to be happening come Pisces season and beyond, and coming into the next Chinese New Year, which is the year of the snake. And so Ophiuchus, or Asclepius in the Greek mythology, this is the snake bearer, the snake charmer. This is the person who has the wisdom to wield what the snake represents, which is the mystery, right? The kundalini, the wisdom of healing, right? And Asclepius, his story is, it's not that awesome. I mean, he did amazing things, and he was able to basically bypass death with his knowledge of medicine and how he applied it, right? He could wield the snakes, and they were like, oh shit, the gods of Olympus were like, oh shit, we can't have that. So we can't have this person teaching the other people how to bypass our system. So they had to take him out, but they memorialized him in the sky, which is why he gets his own constellation. But his foot, and this comes up in another very important configuration astrologically. So when we get into the chart and the planets and stuff, and we talk about these particular starseed connections, I want you to remember this, right? Put a pin in this here, this foot, because it's the foot of Ophiuchus, right? It looks like it's his left foot that is subduing the scorpion, right? We can't allow that raw power to be misguided or to use to intentionally hurt other people. Sometimes we just, we lash out and sting because we've been betrayed. Oh boy, betrayal's a big Scorpio and eighth house theme and experience, because you have to trust and be intimate in the eighth house, because you're going into business with someone, you've married someone, you are having a sexual relationship with someone, you are in a teacher-student relationship, employer employee, business person and their clientele or their customers, whatever the relationship is, it's transactional, but there is something raw and powerful here that is generated. And sometimes, and there's a level of intimacy and trust that's needed in all those types of relationships in order to do the magic, whatever the magic is, right? Whatever the generation of wealth is in our coming together. But in that, with the experience of betrayal and having your trust broken, or having to go into your own shadow, right, and start to go into the crevices of your own abyss in order to really to self-realize and to gain wisdom, sometimes then we lash out because of that as well. So there's a lot of ways that this can be experienced, and this Ophiuchus energy of the foot, and this is where the sun is at the new moon, and the fact that we're going to come into the year of the snake in February. This is a time where whatever those bonds were, that comradeship, that sense of connection and joy of being together, if whatever that's generating is going to be given an opportunity to put to use, to really put ourselves out there, to put that foot forward. And this is going to come up in multiple ways in the astrology, and especially because Jupiter represents this, and Jupiter is the ruling planet of Sagittarius. So this, it's very exciting, but it also carries with it a lot of risk in a negative way. If you're coming at this with the burning heart of the Scorpion because you've been hurt, or you've been betrayed and you are on the revenge end of things, right? This could go very badly. And the good fortune, I think, is really meant for and will be experienced by those who are able to kind of use the resistance as a surface to skate over. And the full moon will really show where we all are with that. And so I also know that it's not going to be easy. And I was listening to something recently that was a podcast that, and there's tarot offered into it, what they're doing. And this person was saying that their particular group, like as a business and as a team, like they felt very protected for a really long time, and then they realized that there's this energy that's very protective kind of took a step back, and people, they did a card reading about that, and people were just talking about this imagery of like it's more about like, okay, the training wheels are off now, and the person teaching you to ride the bike is going to step back and let you pedal and do this for the first time on your own. So, and I just felt like it was such a perfect analogy, metaphor. I always get them confused. There's no Gemini in my chart whatsoever, at least not in my natal chart. Anyway, it's the perfect imagery for I feel like what's been what's been going on. So let's see here. I just like went like mentally completely somewhere else. I'm gonna rein it back in here. So the fact that Ophiuchus, what we do with this energy is going to be, the energy that's coming into it. Again, if you are not really able to subdue this kind of like raw energy that wants more of like has been betrayed and wants revenge, or is acting out of hurt, or being unconscious of things, right? Or is letting the subconscious get a drive without even realizing it. you're going to get what you put into it, right? And there are a lot there are a lot of people that are really happy right now, even with the hardships. There's a lot that people are celebrating, and there's other people that are just like, I am really not okay with what's happening. um, I'm just grateful that I have a family where it doesn't really matter what the political perspective is. That and the thing that's drawn us together is personal tragedy and losing people in the family, and it's just made us that much more focused and patient with each other, and knowing how important it is to be together. So it's made us even less worried about those, the political lines. But there, you can see that as being part of the new moon that we're coming out of. And now this self expenditure into something. Antares, let's talk about Antares, and then we'll start doing the play by play over the next 2 weeks. It's really important to understand like these fixed stars, and these are all starseed positions. So if you have 9, 10, give or take 9 and 10 degrees Sagittarius for sure in your chart, or Gemini, because that's another royal fixed star, that's Aldebaran. If you have this in your chart, you have the signature for the Antarian star seeds. Now, Antares is known as the rival of Mars. Like I said, you're talking about the fixed nature of Scorpio as an energy, which is fixed water. And Mars does rule Scorpio because there's a passion and a desire that is part of this energy. It's a lust, truly. And it drives us to want to create something. So the heart of that is obviously very powerful and is connected to the Archangel Uriel in terms of the royal fixed stars. Antares, Aldebaran, Regulus, which is at 30 degrees Leo, 0 degrees Virgo. The heart of the lion, that's Regulus, that's a royal fixed star, and that's connected to Raphael. And then you have Fomalhaut, which is in Pisces. And that, so, but the Antares, Aldebaran is Archangel Michael, Aldebaran, but Archangel Uriel in Antares. So as a archetype and as a symbol, I mean, you're seeing that sometimes the purification aspect of the fire is what's necessary for the healing as well, and the transmutation that comes with the next sign, which is Sagittarius, which is what this new moon is really activating for all of us, because it's in the zodiac sign. So that's different, right? Sidereal astrology is looking at the constellations and their boundaries, like we're looking at here. Tropical astrology is looking at the signs as each an equal 30 degrees around the dome, so to speak. And so those are two different systems. So the zodiac sign and the degree is Sagittarius, but as you can see, the physical placement in real time is Scorpio and Ophiuchus. So it all matters. If you have the brain to be able to really integrate all these things on a regular basis, then you're doing pretty good, I would say, because all these systems are useful for different reasons. So finding the places where they overlap, I feel like that's where it's at. So Antares, if you are coming at whatever it is you're trying to accomplish with a sense of integrity, and you are operating as Ophiuchus with that foot of just like, oh, hell no, I'm not letting you get out of control and just start stabbing people all the time, right? You will... Antares gives people this sense of like real courage and a sense of really able to putting yourself out there, and to put yourself out there and know that just by doing that there will be some sort of return. There is opportunity that abounds with this particular degree and Antares. But if you are connected to a much lower or a lower form of gratification, if in fact you are coming out of this 8th house energy or Scorpio energy not conscious of it, then it can lead, this star traditionally does not have a good signature to it. It usually means that there's going to be, it's rash and headstrong and belligerent and liberal minded. I kept reading that over and over, that Antares was liberal and liberality and broad mindedness, as if it's a bad thing. It's kind of interesting. So this energy is incredible if you are coming at this from a more spiritual and perhaps humanitarian aspect, certainly more spiritual if you are operating as Ophiuchus and you have tamed that energy within yourself, and that allows you to be able to subdue this, not subdue it in a negative way, but to control it, to manage it, right? To not let it take you over and let, the inner scorpion start stabbing people all over the place and poisoning all your relationships. Because that's what I see happening in some aspects, at least in the digital space, in terms of the way people have responded over the past couple of weeks with their families and such. Like I said, I'm very grateful that that's not my reality. So if you're coming at, and I'm not suggesting that it's going to be bad, I'm just suggesting that if you're bringing that type of, like, if you're acting out of your revenge or betrayal or your hurt, you can throw yourself out there, but it may not go anywhere. And it's certainly, if you can't use the resistance in your life as like a surface in which to skate upon, then there's not going to be much of a reward. It's going to be more of just like the, trial by fire type of thing. Like, it's still going to be, there's no getting around Antares. Now, in terms of starseed stuff, there aren't a ton of Antarian starseeds, and because it's a star that allows for a, well, let's just say that the signature of the beings that inhabit this particular star system that are part of this, these readings, this energy has, if you're identified, let me put it this way, if you're identified more with your physical vessel or your physicality or your materiality, the Antares energy is very difficult. They're not really beings that are meant that are physical. They don't operate that way, as far as I understand it, my research about it. And the energy is really much more non-physical, right? And so, but also very maternal. It is feminine, right? The Scorpio energy and the Antarian starseeds. There is this depth and intensity, and this, and Scorpio energy definitely also investigates. It wants to, you're driven to get to the bottom of something, to get to the truth, to get deeper, to get closer. And so there is intensity and drive with this energy, and that comes with Antarian starseeds. I think there's a lot of intensity with people if you have this in your chart, but I also see again, if you're identified with your materiality, which I think is going to be a big part of this too. If you're identified with your belief system, let's just talk about Mercury being retrograde for 1 second in Sagittarius. I mean, if you're not really taking advantage of this opportunity to recalibrate, at least look at your belief systems, you will get a chance to when Mercury in its retrograde comes back into opposition with Jupiter, which is going to happen during this next 2 weeks, right? So that'll be another foot forward of where Jupiter is, another starseed activation. It's going to be so intense. So lots of opportunity, a lot of reward, but it's not going to come easy, right? It's exactly like, okay, the training wheel's off and dad's letting go of the bike or whatever, right? And you may fall and scrape your knee. You may get really hurt, but I feel like we can do it. And it has a lot to do with the stability and the depth of the relationships that were really fostered or just recognized over the last month with the last new moon. So let's start looking at the play-by-play. I think that's a good transition into the actual charts here. So if you're in, and this is very generalized, guys, like this is just looking at the transits through tropical and, in this way, sidereal astrology, and just kind of giving a general read on it from my perspective. But the real trick here for all of us is to know how this has a relationship to your own charts. And so, of course, if you're interested in a reading, my website is linked in the description box, and you can go and you can book right from there. So I'm discontinuing my subscriber content. So if the website still reflects that exists, just know that, as of January, it's going to go away. So in the meantime, you'll still be getting the new and full moon reports on whatever channel you're watching. Odyssey is gone. So I'm consolidating with and being realistic about where my resources are and where they're going to be distributed and put to use. So Mercury is retrograde. Now, the good news is that Mercury will station direct on the full moon, and the full moon is in its home sign. So that's actually a pretty nice, I feel like that's a pretty nice placement. That's going to be very beneficial for us. Mercury is at its weakest in Sagittarius because it has to actually coalesce and synthesize ideas and can't just like, and has to like settle into, you know, understanding and a belief system of some sort. And Mercury doesn't want to do that. Mercury is that part of our mind that's like, I just want to chew on information for till the end of time. And that's, you know, and then Jupiter is in its detriment because Jupiter wants to be in Sagittarius. It wants to be like, yes, all the big picture. Look how grand it is. And it has to deal with the details. And it's in retrograde. So this is really important that we're allowing ourselves the introspection or at least the observation and willingness to deeply examine our belief systems and the thoughts that perhaps lead to those belief systems, or the different ideas that factor into what we're, you know, our purpose. You know, that's a big part of Sagittarius as well. So people are optimistic. It's normal when we have lots of Sag energy, like especially in the Sun and Sag. But a new moon is, you know, just think about the Nine of Wands. And if you don't know that card, I encourage you to look it up because you'll see exactly the energy of a moon in Sagittarius, which is battered and bruised, but still standing, and all the wands behind you, right? You've earned what you've accumulated, but you've had to kind of had your knocks. That's really what I'm feeling about this next month. And so, and certainly in the next 2 weeks. I can't even believe how many transits are happening. We won't get through them all. It'll be mostly, I'll have to just like bullet them, you know, it's this will happen and this will happen and this will happen. It's constant all the way to the full moon. So it's more of the galactic energies that I'm kind of focused on, at least more so than like the play by play through the next 2 weeks. But they also coincide with the things that are happening in the solar system, right? So Mars is going to station retrograde. So all of that energy, that Scorpio energy that is masculinely driven, right? The penetrating and the desire that motivates us to act, all of that energy that we've been carrying, and especially with Leo, right? That's where we really want to shine. Like people are celebrating and they are putting themselves out there. So the retrograde, I think, is going to be good. I think that people will kind of like scale back a little bit. Now, some people might scale back a lot and be really do a lot of internal work about what their passions are, you know, like how they, you know, expressing themselves, maybe reconsidering how they've expressed themselves, and they might have to go back into like, was that really a good idea? Especially when Mars goes back into Cancer. Now, of course, Mars in Cancer in its retrograde could easily translate into another lockdown. I don't want to say too much about that, but that could easily happen. But also to just kind of like a pulling in and really consolidating our resources and home and family, right? That's what Cancer is, and where we feel safe, where we feel rooted, where we feel secure. I think Mars coming back into the retrograde in general is going to last until there's February again. Mars is going to last until February, and it's not going to come out of shadow until May. So you know, the action outward is not going to be nearly as obvious. And again, this kind of goes into the year of the snake, because this is much more of a yin energy, whereas the dragon, which is what we're finishing now, is much more a yang energy, but they're the same general representation, right? The dragon and the snake. The snake is the mystery, right? It is the wisdom, and going into that, it's much more yin energy, passive, receptive. The water energy, just like Scorpio. So we have to be able to manage that energy, and that's where our intuition comes from. That's where the truth comes from, our capacity to maintain ourselves as we sink down into the abyss, right? Still waters run deep. We have to train ourselves to find that stillness. Boy, and I think Mars retrograde might actually be very helpful with that. You could really take this retrograde energy and put it into an inner practice that is very much about an individual emotional root system. You know, the sign of Cancer, as much as it's about home and family, it is about deep feeling and intuition at a personal level, right? It's where our feelings really develop. And I think we really are going to need that in order to capitalize on our opportunities um, moving forward. And again, this is going to have a lot to, I think the energy that we are creating with each other right now is huge in moving forward. And I think it's just going to be that much more supported with them. I think with the Mars retrograde, there's a lot of ways that it can go, and paying attention to what it's doing. Now, that also is a starseed activation, because Mars will be conjunct when it does retrograde. It will be conjunct to the Beehive cluster, or M44, which is in the Cancer constellation. And the Beehive cluster, also known as the Manger, as well. And I've heard that this particular star cluster has been known as like the origin of humanity. Like, this is where we came from, is a star in this cluster. I've also found it very prominent in really strong starseed charts, and didn't know why, because to me, I was like, well, this is just whatever, this random degree in Leo. And then when I started looking in the Beehive cluster, and then I started just the imagery of the hive really stuck out to me as well. And there's just something here. So if you have 5, 6, and 7 degrees Leo in your chart, I mean, you have this starseed, and it's a very powerful one, coming from the Beehive cluster. So this is where Mars is going to station retrograde. So I also encourage you to look up M44, the Beehive cluster, the Manger, right, and understand it more, because the degree is about the permanency of the human heart, right? That no matter what shape we're taking, or what personalities we have, right? Our personalities are expressing ourselves, but we all have, the human heart is pretty standard. And there's something permanent. It's kind of like the constellations. It's something that we can always kind of go back to. So the Mars retrograde has not really presented itself definitively. I feel like after the kite, you can kind of see it actually. The kite that we just had with the Sun and Sag and Mars and the nodes of the Moon, which is the trajectory of the soul in its evolution, and certainly is related to a dragon itself, the nodes of the Moon. I feel like that they're, the capacity to really work together, to cooperate, to, meet each other at our different levels, but also understand the relativity of those social values when it comes to the human heart, right, and the human experience, and how we can transcend where we've been, and, come into a new understanding of how all of this, how we're all able to work together. But I think that people are going to have to, that we are going to kind of get forced into an inner work somehow with this Mars retrograde. And I think there could be a bit of the challenge that could be part of it. This whole Mars retrograde thing is going to last for, like I said, definitely till February, and then not come out of its retrograde shadow until May. So Mars is going to be going back over. It's going to be like turning around and going over and retracing all of his steps in up to this point, because maybe there's, maybe there's something missing. I do feel like that this could easily be part of the difficult aspects of that we have to learn to kind of there's inner work that needs to happen, let's just put it that way. And I think that Mars retrograde is a perfect time to do that, and we may be forced into it, right? That's what I mean, like a lockdown or a pushback into the homes due to a number of circumstances is very easily and maybe something that's meant to inspire that relativity of like, we're all here together. Like, I don't know. It also feels like it'd be the perfect time to to Project Bluebeam it. You know what I mean? So we'll see what happens. I like the mystery. I mean, I think it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of boring to just be like, I'm going to predict every single facet of everything that will happen. I like that there's mystery to things happening. So we'll see what happens with Mars. But I do feel like that not being able to act outwardly as much because of its retrograde is going to have an effect on well, it's going to have an effect on all of us. But never fear, Mercury will be direct by the time we get, once we get to the full moon. Mercury will be direct and it'll be much happier. So what else is going on? Oh my gosh, there's so many things going on between now and this full moon. So we started at the new moon, and and we talked about Antares. Venus, another starseed activation. Venus is in Capricorn. It's finishing her transit of Capricorn, I think, throughout the first lunar quarter. That means that Venus is going to move into Aquarius and is going to meet Pluto there during this time. Holy crap. Everybody's feeling it. The unsettled feeling, especially since November 5th, even if it's not yours personally, I'm telling you that it is finding a way to express itself in all of our lives somehow. It's just this uneasiness. So, but the good news is that Venus in Capricorn is very mature, I think, and there is this sense of maturity and kind of responsibility about our relationships and our resources with Venus in Capricorn. And the trine to Uranus is almost like a cheat code in terms of like, yeah, there are things that we can't control, and it's really kind of the, what's happening. Just because we don't personally control it doesn't mean that it's not something that's for the good of everybody, but it's just something that you didn't anticipate maybe, or something that's new and exciting, Uranus being outside the box. But the Venus trine, it feels like a little bit of a cheat code to me. It gives the urge to try something new that it can apply to all areas of life. And maybe it's going to be, the cheat code is like, hey, if you maybe approach your relationships and resources, the Venus themes, with, some more traditional kind of traditional focuses, right? And especially if you celebrate any type of winter holiday, Christmas and whatever, this is a perfect time to get into your traditions, right? And perhaps it's not just about, it's Venus and Capricorn, it's the whole, right? That's what Capricorn is the entire structure that holds it all together, the ecosystem, right? The forest, the extended family. Maybe there's some tradition there that just, abiding by that is kind of the way to, try something new. And maybe go out and socialize, maybe when you wouldn't in this time. And this is right after the new moon. Okay, so let's move forward to the 2nd of December. So you're gonna see that there's just like one after another of like major transit, and you just have to go through the weeks and see how it really influences you. And knowing where this stuff is in your chart is really important. Your affections will be stimulated, and new love is possible when Venus and Uranus are in a trine. But, expect the unexpected, but at the same time, realize that there are things that you can kind of fall back on traditionally, perhaps, or know that, there has to be something, is there a fabric, is there a social fabric or a institutional fabric of something that you're part of that you want to give weave your own contribution into. I feel like this is kind of like, feeling stimulated to do that, or maybe that there's an unexpected windfall of resource or finance that you're like, maybe I could do something with this. I want to, it says even if your finances allowed, even gambling would be enjoyable. I just, and I'm not suggesting that you should or shouldn't do that. You just get stimulated in terms of your creativity and your art, and it might be a really good time, especially Uranus in Taurus. I mean, these earth energies, especially these two, really have a lot to do with resource and the way that they, structure our reality. And I think, if you have the urge to try something new or just kind of devote yourself to something, something that really stimulates you. Maybe your affection, like I said, your affections are stimulated. I think this has a lot to do with maybe taking, maybe there is kind of an unexpected windfall or a redistribution of resources, or maybe crypto does something, or maybe like precious metal, maybe investments that or assets that you have change in value kind of suddenly because it's better for everybody. Something like that. This could easily be like, okay, I'm going to take that and I'm going to do something productive with it, right? And feel really good about that. That'd be a great Venus trine Uranus. So that's happening right after the new moon. So right away, there's just like, hey, something might happen that you could easily take and invest into the new moon, like the opportunity to really put yourself into something that is meaningful to you and you care about. Oh boy. And then right after this, Mercury is in an opposition to Jupiter. So this is the second reference to a foot forward because Jupiter is conjunct Rigel. So let me see if I can bring it up on the astronomy software here. Okay. Maybe just, Rigel. Rigel is the knee of the front foot of the Orion constellation. Okay. It's moving there. Where are we? Okay, let's bring this back up. There we go. It's moving over, and there's Cancer, so the beehive cluster's in there. Maybe I can give a shot. Okay, here's Orion right here. Here's Rigel. It's the front foot, right? The foot stepping forward as he's lifting his club because he's hunting. He's a savage. That's who Orion is. And apparently he's, the half mortal and also half immortal, right? What was it? Was Zeus his father? I really lost track. So, but we're all familiar with this constellation and with this belt. But also Rigel, front foot forward. So same type of energy as Antares, but kind of got some more honor and military honor attached to it. Still kind of a keen focus, very strategic. But again, if you're coming out, putting your foot forward and you're not sure about what you're doing, or you don't have enough experience, or you're not really focused on it, and you're just kind of wildly, putting that foot out and you're wildly like waving your club around, it's not going to go so well. But this opposition with the retrograde Mercury, I think, is very interesting because there is, these 2 degrees of Sagittarius and Gemini. Number one, there's this sense of a rebirth, right? Or an up-leveling in some way. With Gemini, it's more about the robust youth changes into a mature thinker, right? That there is growth and evolution even in ideas, right? Through the process of logic and rationalism, all the things Gemini, and just words, right? Words are so in consciousness comes through our individual ego consciousness, and that's a lot of that is ruled by Gemini. So, and then Sagittarius, which is where Mercury is, is about the the emotional rebirth as everybody comes together for an Easter sunrise service, because that's what that represents as well. The resurrection is a very Sagittarius theme, right? It is the catalyzing fire that allows for transmutation. And that's what the resurrection represents. So you have these 2 themes of a up-leveling or a rebirth of some way. One is very individual, one is collective, which is Sagittarius. So these 2 things opposition together, which is you can usually feel very optimistic. Now, keep in mind, both of them are retrograde and both of them are in the signs that they hate being in, that they're at their weakest. So they're both kind of weak and they're both retrograde. So people may not feel overly optimistic. Maybe they're overcompensating, big ideas and grand plans, but I think that this is more of a chance to question our plans, our ideas, and our beliefs. We might even be challenged. We might be just challenging ourselves or be challenged by circumstances that force us to examine any weak spots in our arguments. That is really standing out to me now that I'm reading it out loud. These are my notes. Beliefs or opinions that are too far from the social norm may cause controversy now. That's very interesting. You may need to find a balance between being too provocative and being too dull. This is important not to be making important decisions as well. I think that there again with Jupiter, there's a lot of opportunities for success, but you don't want to be overconfident. And so the retrograde kind of helps with that. I just feel like this is one of those oppositions, and there'll be another one, right? There's already once a Mercury opposed Jupiter before the retrograde. So now it's in the retrograde, and it's going back over the same basic territory, different degrees. And it's, this is a time, I think, really of questioning plans and ideas and beliefs. And it's the opposition of the maturity and the emotional rebirth that's happening that's kind of forcing the issue. And so you can either take advantage of it and be like, why is it that I believe these things? Why is it that these, my plans and ideas, this is what I really want to be doing. Is this what's meaningful to me? So that's going to come up big time in this opposition. And on the same day, you have the sun in a square to Saturn, which is a huge blast to the ego a lot of times. So, I'm going to bring this back to the chart so we can look at that day. Because the 4th, and I know that the 4th has come up in other people's analytics, I guess you could say. I'm sure other astrologers. I mean, this is, the sun square Saturn. Not only is it sun square Saturn, but the sun is conjunct the U.S. natal ascendant, right? In the chart of the U.S., the natal chart of the United States at the signing of the Declaration of Independence is 13 degrees Sagittarius is the ascendant. The rising sign is Sagittarius. And the sun is here in a square to Saturn, which has been newly direct and is definitely like, okay, the mold is here. Like, you're going to pour in or not because you've been building it this whole time. And the sun is definitely our ego in its expression. And when it's in a square to Saturn, it really tests us. And we can get very pessimistic and depressed if we're not getting our egos fulfilled or satisfied. It's a test of character. So you have Mercury and Jupiter opposite each other. It's just like, oh, there's this opportunity to like mature and to have this moment of emotional rebirth, our own personal resurrection. And then you have Sun square Saturn. It's like, but you're going to have to kind of suffer through it, right? You're going to have to face the past, the dark past, right? The things that have already happened that we have to look at so they don't come into the next cycle. Because if they come in feeling if we come into this next cycle feeling restricted and weighted down by things, especially responsibilities or duties that we don't have, that we're not gonna find reward. We're just gonna be like, oh, all the resistance. It would, but it's important to meet your obligations. With a sun square Saturn, I feel like people just are so easily just like, oh, it's just too much. And they just kind of like bail out on things they have to do. And you don't expect to feel lighthearted or happy. So whatever's going to be going down come next week after like the Thanksgiving holiday is starting to wind down, it's going to be a test, and people are not going to feel very happy. And I know a lot of people already don't feel very happy. So this might very well amplify that. But this is going to directly have to do with the United States as a country, because the sun is going to be conjunct its ascendant and making this square to Saturn. People getting really pessimistic, coming under pressure from whoever needs the job done. So it could be an authority figure or your boss, and it's not going to be easy. Criticism, rejection. It's important to be patient and have a sense of strong work ethic. And that's, again, this is going on. And then Mercury and Jupiter are opposite each other. And they're like, I'm not really ready to put my foot forward yet, but this is the direction I want to go. I want to mature. I want wisdom. I want to grow. I want to feel this, resurrection from this old piece of this old version of who I am. And then the sun square Saturn's like, okay, well, in order to do that, we have to all come to terms with what has already happened. The widow's past is brought to light. That is 13 degrees Sagittarius in a square to Saturn. That is definitely this is a difficult transit that people are not going to like. Guilt, restriction, burden. People might avoid responsibility, but I'm telling you, if you can't face your own stuff and really be willing to question your belief systems, whatever they are, you may try to, ignore those consequences, but your subconscious or inner voice will remember and give you a very, unsettled and worried feeling. And then you become the stinging, Scorpion, right? Just all over the place. The longer you procrastinate, the worse the problem will become. So you may justifiably feel that you're being hard done. I think a lot of people are already feeling that. It's just going to get that much worse, and may experience rejection, isolation, sadness, discouragement. Just get it done, whatever it is. Like, pull up your big kid pants, all of us, not, me included, and do what needs to get done. The sooner your self-confidence is going to return. So if you're really struggling with that, pull it together and keep going. Though you probably won't receive much praise or recognition, you will have overcome a major stumbling block and gained satisfaction. You'll be better placed the next time you face such an obstacle, right? You fell off the bike. This is the first time without your training wheels, and you fell over and you skinned your knee, and you're just like, oh God, right? So get off your butt and get back on the bike, or go tend your wound, or whatever. But know that you can do it, right? Just because you fall off the bike doesn't mean that you'll never be able to ride it again. So the 5th, we have a Mercury cazimi. Can you imagine? Geez, we haven't even gotten to next weekend yet. So you'll see that Mercury and the Sun will come into their conjunction technically on the 5th. Before it rolls over to the 6th. So Mercury conjunctions, everybody gets real talkative and sharing. This is going to be about, like, people are going to start talking about what's to come, right? And really just like, maybe we should really, if you see your shadow, that's 6 weeks more of winter, right? If you don't, then you're just like, spring's coming early this year, right? Because 15 degrees Sagittarius is the groundhog looking for its shadow, right? The value of anticipating new turns of events and ascertaining future prospects. Maybe this is more about like, okay, I saw this happen before, and this is what happened as a result of these particular signs and signals. So maybe there's some value here, and be like, we did this once before, didn't we? Those times of conversations are going to come up. Perhaps it's going to be something that again, the Mercury retrograde, you might be still considering things, but it's going to be right there and expressed because the Sun is involved here. And this is going to be a lot of what came off this square to Saturn, because Mercury is then going to square Saturn. And so that's going to like force us to really process these things mentally, okay? Mars. And that happens actually the very next day. We're getting very close to Pearl Harbor Day, by the way. So Mercury and Saturn are going to come into a square on the 6th. And this is the same day that Mars is going to station. So by the time we get to early morning on Saturday, next Saturday the 7th, Mars will have stationed for its retrograde, and Mercury and Saturn will have already come into the square, and the Sun and Jupiter are about to come into their opposition. So lots more tension in the astrology by next weekend, coming into Pearl Harbor Day, and all of the stuff having to do with war and battles right now, that whole arena of reality. So Mercury square Saturn, like I said, it does favor hard work, mental work, and work that's better done alone, right? And I think that that is exactly, I think a lot of us are going to have to be very comfortable going into our own intuition and really connecting with kind of the seed, spiritual ancestry, rather than relying on anything else external to like tell us what we should or shouldn't do. I do feel like that's going to be part of the Mercury and Sun conjunction, or the cazimi. And then you have Mars station retrograde, and then you have Mercury square Saturn. And so communicating plans and ideas are going to be difficult because of negative thinking, misunderstanding. It might just be important to just kind of pull back, take your time when making important decisions, seek trusted professional advice. There may be some distance or separation in close relationships, gloomy thoughts, bad news, loneliness can negatively affect our mental well-being. Try to remember you're probably seeing the worst of everything. I think that it's more about in this moment, especially with this square, is more about, hey, maybe the isolation is a good thing, because it kind of, is a kind of a camouflage while we are really delving into a wisdom that is beyond just the normal everyday human understanding. You're talking about what's buried, the Akashic records, right? What's buried under the Sphinx. You know, what is the Great Pyramid all about? There's the mystery that's there, and I think that you know, there's probably a deep dive potentially coming there that we really, you know, people. Don't be afraid of it. Let's put it that way. But again, communication can be very difficult at this time. And yeah, there could be bad news. Absolutely. And with Mars in its retrograde, possibly. So the degree that it stations retrograde, the Beehive cluster, 7 degrees Leo, the constellations. Interesting. The power of basic spiritual values, which refer to man's common humanity and to all enduring archetypes. So the light side to this retrograde with Mars is that taking our personal initiative and turning it inwards in order to come back out on the other side with this perspective, you know, intact. And so it just depends on where you are in terms of your connection to power, the power of basic spiritual values, or you've encamped yourself in one place or another. And maybe, I don't know, I'm getting some weird vibes off this Mercury square Saturn. So, you know, part of it is because the next day, on Pearl Harbor Day, Neptune's going to station out of its retrograde. So you can bet that the fog of war is going to roll in now that Neptune stations direct. Nothing changes in terms of what's behind the scenes and what's, you know, what the nature of it is all, because that's what Pisces is. It's just that you know, the film is going to go back up, right? The smoke and mirrors are about to turn back on with Saturn going direct. At the same time that Venus and Pluto come together into a conjunction, and the Sun is opposite Jupiter. So there's this power that is being like released with Venus and Pluto. It increases your need for all of those Venus experiences of love and affection and value, and you want to experience that companionship at a deeper, more intense level. And I would say at 0 degrees Aquarius, this is talking about humanity as a whole. This can lead to problems if you're single, but this transit can also throw a spanner in the works of a healthy relationship if you misplay your cards. Oh, that's a fascinating way to see that. This reminds me about going back to that Venus trine Uranus at the beginning of the week, where the ability to, you know, maybe kind of being a little bit more conservative about how you play your cards might be a good strategy. And then when you get to this point, you have real power that you can wield in attracting what it is that you actually want when it comes to Venus things. And you can have a magnetic attractiveness that pulls people in subconsciously with this. Woo! In this case, there will be a tendency to manipulate others by guilt-tripping them, subversive tactics, for the good of humanity, right? That's going to be the thing with Aquarius on the dark side of it. So that's something to look out for. Possessiveness, jealousy. There may be a tendency to fall for harmful or dangerous people with Venus conjunct Pluto, right? All for the good of humanity. We've heard that many times before. In a healthy and happy relationship, this transit can lead to intense sexual experiences if the other half is keen. A degree, oh, that's interesting. In both cases, openly giving love and affection without catches is the key to satisfaction. So that's on a personal level, especially if you have Aquarius, like your 7th house, for instance, or even your 8th house, I guess. So Neptune stations direct, you get this like opportunity to really just like pull in and attract what it is that you really want and value. And especially when it comes to Aquarius, it's going to be things that are more about the collective consciousness. But then Sun is opposite Jupiter as well. So just like where Mercury was, the Sun comes into an opposition. And this type of tension, though, really it stimulates and brings opportunities for success, right? Things fall into place when the Sun is opposite Jupiter without much effort. So it leads you to believe you're on a lucky streak or you're gifted somehow. But you definitely want to balance it with overconfidence or laziness, right? Because then you could get embarrassed because then you lose out just as quickly. So You also it can lead to greed and envy and extravagance. I think the Jupiter retrograde is probably, excuse me, hopefully helping with this, because this can also amplify destructive behaviors like gambling and addiction. So imagine the fog of war comes back in with Neptune stationing direct. You have Venus and Pluto coming into this conjunction that makes you basically like, you know, able to hypnotize anybody. And then you have Sun opposite Jupiter. This is like, if you have no self-control, this is going to totally amplify those destructive behaviors. And where is Jupiter? Well, it is still in conjunction with Rigel, the front foot of the Orion constellation, right? I mean, if you're on a violent streak, for instance, right, putting that foot forward and that club up means that you're gonna do something that is very destructive. And but it also could be things like gambling, addiction, right, consumables. Wanting more and more can leave you feeling unsatisfied and like you're missing out. Ooh. If you have trouble with self-control, this transit is more likely to see you going to excess and wasting any good fortune. And I would say with the smoke and mirrors aspect of Neptune, that this is really like what a good time to set a trap. Oh my gosh. The rest of the lunar cycle leading to the full moon, it kind of, once we hit the first quarter, which is the Pisces moon, and that's on the 8th, so we have to get past Pearl Harbor Day here. It seems like there's this huge lead up and something that could really happen at this point, and then you come to the 8th and we have the first quarter moon, which is probably where we're really going to feel the most challenge personally, just like every quarter moon. What do I do? Right? We want to kind of protect people, but I think we all kind of know that we're in this together. We all feel that we're in this together. What do we do? The big one leading up to the full moon, honestly, is that Mars is opposite Venus. So you can only imagine, you know, the face-off between the emperor and the empress. That's what's going on here. And Mars is retrograde. So a lot of times, you know, when these planets are retrograde, they tend to want to overcompensate. If you know, people tend to want to overcompensate if they are not really getting into what the retrograde can energetically provide, which is, you know, retrospection and an opportunity to turn that energy inwards towards ourselves, to maybe go into more of a yin phase. And I know that's hard for Mars. And so, unless we know how to make the best of a Mars retrograde, or if we're not ourselves pushed back into our homes, which does seem like it could be a possibility when Mars comes back into Cancer. It is going to be in opposition to Pluto, but it's going to take a little while. Not until after this full moon is that going to happen. But the opposition to Venus definitely, you know, it just increases all of that tension. And the tension can be released with things that we really enjoy, right? And joy that is not based in denigrating other people, or true joy. But a tense relationship could definitely see tempers boil over. And a positive way to release this buildup of tension and frustration is through physical or creative outlets. And so, I mean, I think that, you know, Venus in Aquarius, can kind of take your feels out of the relationship and be able to tap into the collective as a whole, and the value of humanity as a whole. And that we all have our role to play. And so there may be a tension that builds up around like, no, I'm very staunchly, you know, in this position. And Venus in Aquarius is like, well, we all have our role to play. Like, without the opposition, you know, without us having these roles, then there is no play. There's no mystery play to act out. And that's what 6 degrees Aquarius is really about. That, you know, it's a masked figure. The real person behind the mask is not what is participating in the acts in the play. It's the mask that's doing it. And it's all relative. So, but I think it's going to come through some sort of like tension, and it's not going to be very pretty. Otherwise, I think people are really going to get, you know, a robust competitive spirit is very, you know, leads to victories and in sports and business. And I really feel like that could very easily lead to alliances, coming out of this type of opposition is just as long as you remain to be friendly and human, have a sense of humanitarianism. Excuse me. We're so close, guys. You could take full advantage of this type of tension, and robust competitive spirit is a really good way to use this. Now, Mars is retrograde, so as long as you're not overcompensating for that, maybe kind of scale it back more and kind of tap into the whole a little bit. Perhaps that's going to be a way to release some of the tension and frustration, because we all get so self-absorbed in whatever it is that we're doing or that we believe. That's just part of being human. And in Leo, we express it. So now that Mars is coming into its retrograde, maybe we kind of scale that back a little bit and allow ourselves to kind of just settle into the feels of being part of humanity. And maybe there's more to all of this than the narrow personalized perspective that Mars usually settles into, because Mars is the seed, right? But the seed ain't nothing without the soil, and Venus is the soil, right? The living earth. So, and then we come into the 15th is our full moon. It'll be in late Gemini, right? Which is also Orion starseed territory. So there's a lot of Orion starseed energy around. There's just a lot of starseed energy in the next 2 weeks in this particular new moon. It's really all over the place. So if you're interested in the galactic aspects of your astrology, like I said, you can go to my website, linked in the description box, and under services, you'll find a variety of galactic type of readings. So that's going to do it, friends. I hope, Mercury stations direct. But I already told you that. So I hope everyone is doing well, taking good care of themselves. I'm going to leave it there for today. Thank you very much for being here. I really appreciate all of you so very much. So I guess I'll see you on the next video. Take care, everyone. Take care of each other, truly. And, take the opportunity to, see that the resistance might be a perfect opportunity to grow and to learn and to establish another level of wisdom. I think we all could use a dose of that right now. So grateful for all of you. Thank you for being here. I truly appreciate you. I'll see you on the next video. Bye.